This is our June marketing mingle. If this is your first mingle, welcome. We do these pretty much every month during normal times. During this virtual time, we've been doing them every other month, and we typically also have educational panel discussions when we're not doing mingles. But if this is your first time or your 50th time, welcome. We're excited to have you here tonight. A little bit about AMA Boston. We're the networking and educational hub for greater Boston area marketers, and really Rhode Island and New Hampshire as well. We have a lot of colleagues over there. So it's a broad reach. It's a great community. We've been around for a really long time. I think, there are a lot of different professional associations you can get involved with, but we're really a tight-knit community. We help each other out. Over the last year or so, the community's really come together to help with job changes, transitions, continued education and stimulation when we're all at home. So it's a really fun place to be, and we're glad you could join us here tonight. Shameless solicitation here. Think about joining. Our members are really the lifeblood of our organization. We're a nonprofit, so all of the lovely people on our board of directors, and myself included, are unpaid. We're just here because we love marketing and we love the community. So think about joining. It means a lot. If you come to these events a lot, you get additional benefits. We'd be happy to talk to you about those afterwards. Feel free to reach out to anyone on the board or anyone you see on our website. We can help you out. So for tonight, we're going to be doing a quick Q&A to kick off with Tina Cassidy, CMO of GBH. Some of you might know WGBH. We're going to be talking a little bit with her about the rebrand. So that'll be a lot of fun. Tina's great. I'll introduce her shortly. Then we'll be giving you an opportunity to meet each other. So there'll be 2 networking breakout sessions from 6:30 to 7. And at the end, if you have a little more time in your evening to hang out, we're going to be doing an AMA Boston Twitter Spaces event. So we'll put more information about that in the chat, but that will be at 7 at the conclusion of this event, or I guess you could say the party's going on and we're going to extend on in. So without further ado, I'm going to actually stop my share, and if I can, I don't have my mouse today, guys. I'm working with the keypad track, so if I fumble a little, you'll have to bear with me. I wanted to introduce tonight's special guest. Tina, do you want to jump on and tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at GBH. I've been in this role for a little over 2 years. Basically half of my time in this job has been remote. Before coming to GBH, I was in the agency world for about 15 years, locally at Inkhouse, and before that at Solomon McCown. I got my start professionally as a journalist, spending most of my time at the Boston Globe in various reporting and editing roles, covering things like politics, fashion, sports. I also write books on the side. I am the author of 3 nonfiction books. I write about women in culture. My latest book is about how women won the vote. It's called Mr. President, How Long Must We Wait?
Awesome. We'll have to get those linked up in the chat at some point. Sounds like you're very busy. Yes. Tell us a little bit more about what it's been like being the CMO of GBH for the last 2+ years, and talk about the transition maybe from your former life, or how the skills have played into what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been exciting and challenging and important, certainly. GBH is a sprawling organization. Many people are unaware of all the different facets of GBH. And for me, I think I had a vague idea, but I had to spend a lot of time really immersing myself in the breadth and the impact that we have on our communities and across the PBS and NPR system. So I'll just quickly tell you what we are. We create most of the content for PBS. We're based here in Boston, so that means we produce Frontline, Masterpiece, Nova, American Experience, Antiques Roadshow. We're also the home of PBS Learning Media and other children's programs like Arthur and Molly of Denali. And we have a local NPR station, 89.7, as well as a classical station and a jazz stream. So we are a lot of things, which, you asked Megan how my previous experience sort of rolled into my current role. You know, for many of you, if you work in agencies, you know, you're juggling a lot of clients. And so, you know, you could have a few clients to 20 clients. I was an executive vice president at Inkhouse. So I was both working with clients and working on the business side of the agency. So, you know, you're sort of frantic all of the time. And that was great training for being CMO of an organization like GBH, because there were so many different directions that I could go in every day. So when I started, you know, I had to really think about who we were and what we wanted to be, how we wanted to present ourselves to the country, and really start to think more about what the audience needed. So, you know, understanding who our audience is, how audiences are changing, while also understanding how the media landscape was changing. So it was a lot, and it was really, really exciting, and also, you know, intimidating coming in and becoming the first CMO of a brand, a legacy brand like WGBH then. You know, it was a lot. So I was very careful, did a big listening tour, did a lot of research. Luckily, the research department reports into me, as does media relations, community relations, government relations, our creative team, marketing, and station relations, which is kind of a new one. That wouldn't be a typical thing that, you know, you would have at an agency. Everything else I had had before, but station relations basically is like pitching our programs to PBS stations across the country. So you might not have had to consider the fact that, you know, we have to go to programmers and ask them to carry our stuff. So that's basically what they do. Yeah, so, you know, it was certainly a challenging time to be alive, let alone, you know, focused on my professional duties. And with the pandemic, you know, remote work made all of it a little bit more challenging, but we got with the program really fast. And what's been amazing about the last 18 months is just seeing how our mission really came to life. It was somewhat more abstract before the pandemic hit and the racial reckoning. But to see how we were able to really provide the community with what they really needed every day, whether that was COVID resources, racial reckoning resources, you know, distance learning resources, all of that, you know, we really pulled together quickly. So it's really a joy to be able to work with an organization that has such a strong mission at its core.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I jump in with another question, guys, we're going to give you an opportunity to ask Tina questions directly at the end. So be thinking of those along the way as we cruise along. So, you know, you were talking a little bit about the pandemic, which I feel like has become, you know, maybe over talked about, but I think the thing that I'm most excited to learn from folks like you, Tina, is sort of what good things came out of it? What did you learn that you're taking away from it? Because we were talking about this before you guys all got on tonight, guys. There's so much good learning, and I think there's a lot of marketing changes probably for the better. So any insights or thoughts there, Tina?
Yeah, well, two things I would say. One is, you know, we're a 900-person organization, so we're pretty big, and we're also a nonprofit. And so, you know, the typical question that you ask when you're going for a CMO role is, what's my budget going to be? But I knew that that wasn't really the point of my job, right? It was really about the budget will be what it is, and you have to make the best of it. And it's really about how you bring that mission to life every day. And so when you have the pandemic hit very soon after, you know, starting in a job like this, everybody was unsure about the economy, and public media certainly took a huge hit with, you know, many local sponsors, so many of whom are in the arts and culture community, who themselves had been severely impacted. So we knew revenues would be going down. So for us, it was really about how we redirected the resources we did have to have the most impact. And that's just an important marketing lesson, no matter where you are and what is happening in the world, you know, ensuring that what you do spend money on and how you do direct your time is really going to have an impact. So that's what we did. We kind of shut down a lot of campaigns, spent much less money on radio advertising or promotion, for example, because commuting had been disrupted. And we did things like created a commencement for high school students and collaborated with our commercial TV stations, for example, to broadcast it. It was also simulcast on YouTube. We stood up, distance learning resources. So partnering with World Channel, which has access to 171 different PBS stations nationwide, so that we could run, high quality educational programming during school hours for kids who didn't have internet access, right? So for us, we just decided we're gonna focus only on those things that our community really mattered, and we let everything go. I mean, the result was we had a really good budget scenario at the end of the year, and we felt like we really did the right thing. It wasn't just about financial resources that we redirected. Our Boston Public Library studio in Copley Square was closed because the library itself was closed. And so we took our production team from there and asked them to create a virtual event series called The State of Race, to drive community conversations about, racism. That kicked off in May of last year, and we just completed the final one of the series a couple of weeks ago, and that ended up being one of our most successful event series ever in the history of GBH, with more emails than ever before, and so forth. So you can, when you focus and really have your eye on impact, you can certainly get there.
Well, that's terrific. And I think GBH has always been a community-focused, giving back brand. I think a lot of brands have been shifting that way over the last year for the better. Speaking of, guys, just a quick aside, sometimes people join these events because they're transitioning or looking for work, or you might know people who are looking for work. You can always head over to our website and check out our job board that we work with local companies to post jobs and get them out to you all. So feel free, we can always share more information in the chat. Maybe someone on our team can do that, but that's always available and worth mentioning. Tina, I wanted to ask you to maybe elaborate a little bit more on the rebrand, maybe why you did it, what, the story, if for folks who haven't maybe listened to our podcast episode, which you should, with Tina. I think that's a really, really interesting story.
Yeah, well, I didn't plan to be the CMO who came in and did a rebrand. That was never my intention. It just feels like such a cliche, but I arrived and immediately absorbed myself in all of this research about how, broadcast TV was on the decline, as was, terrestrial radio. And so, knowing that our brand's name was literally the result of an FCC license for a broadcast company, sort of like, well, that doesn't speak to the future. It really speaks to the previous 7 decades. So for those of you who don't know, the FCC would give radio and TV licenses east of the Mississippi, a W, and then you got to choose 3 letters afterwards. Often it was related to a place. Our GBH stands for Great Blue Hill. If you're west of the Mississippi, you would get a K. So, we just felt like, because we create content that lives on every platform, because our content is not limited to our local geography, that it didn't really make sense to be tied to this old idea of a broadcast name. So we dropped the W and kept the GBH. We felt like it was important to keep part of our name as part of our legacy. People who knew us really well would call us GBH anyway. So it helped us be sort of a friendlier, shorter, more colloquial version of who we already were. And the other thing we were solving for was how to kind of use our mark in a digital environment in a way that was more visible, less horizontal, could really fit in a social media tile or a podcast tile, an app tile, and the WGBH, which was long and narrow, didn't work. So you'd have to make it really small, and then it was almost illegible. We needed a color that really popped on a mobile phone, and so we went from blue to purple. You know, purple is also a color that represents equality, and you know, we just felt like it was right for us. And there aren't many media companies that are purple. They're either red or blue. So we felt like we were kind of right in the middle. There was a lot of blue sky there.
Yeah, cool changes, and what an interesting time to be part of the organization and spearheading great change. So we wanted to talk with you about podcasting because our community is really into podcasts. We have a podcast. If you guys haven't listened to it, Talking Marketing, support us. We'd love that. But tell us a little bit about what podcasting means in your world, and maybe what you think the future of media looks like.
Sure. Well, we certainly believe in podcasts and their future. We own PRX, which is probably something I should have mentioned when I listed all of the other things, but here I am mentioning it now. You know, PRX is the third largest podcast distributor in America, and we collaborate with them on many things. You know, for us, podcast is really important on-demand form of audio, right? And we've been steeped in the radio space, but certainly saw the future of podcasting as audio on demand. NPR has been incredibly successful with their podcasts, and we've learned a lot from studying their approach. And in the past year, as part of sort of a COVID experiment, launched a podcast with NPR in collaboration with BUR called Consider This. That sort of started as like a COVID daily and morphed into a combination of national and local news that both newsrooms work together on.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to ask you my final question, Tina, from me, and then we can open things up to the audience where things get, more interesting. I'm sure you guys have great questions, but while you're thinking about those, I always like to ask our CMO guests for a piece of advice to leave with the audience. I think, a lot of us aspire to be CMOs or senior marketers, and I think it's really fun to connect with interesting local CMOs on these chats. So any general marketing advice, or maybe how to become a CMO kind of advice to leave with our audience?
Well, I'll offer two pieces of advice. One is, you can often, I think, step into any marketing role that's not specific to being a CMO, and you're told, okay, this is our thing, go market it. And, having been in the PR and marketing world on the agency side for so long and hearing from clients, here's my thing, go, get it out there in the world. There is, of course, only so much that good marketing and PR can do. If the product isn't right and you're not connecting it appropriately with the right audience, it's never going to fly. So I would say my piece of advice is to really always understand the audience first. And that will always help you connect your product better with them. The language you use, the tone of voice, the platforms that you're engaging on, and never make it about you and your product, and always make it about them. We've invested a lot in understanding our local audience specifically in the last 6 months. And, it's never easy because audiences are always changing, right? And if your product isn't changing, that can be a challenge. So that's one piece of advice. The other I will say is, as you come into any new job, I've always found that even when I was a reporter, kind of having a listening tour is essential to getting grounded, asking people what they think is missing from the organization, what is the opportunity here, and really asking people in lots of different levels and different departments, and not just your immediate team, right? I think it gives you a better understanding of the organization, and honestly, even people much further removed from marketing can kind of give you the best insights there, because they don't know what's really holding you back as an organization on the marketing side. So I would I would offer those two tidbits. You did ask, how do you become a CMO? I would say that's a really good question because that was never my intention. A recruiter came knocking, but it really felt like the right organization based on my experience and what I'm passionate about, which is, media and, mission. So I think, just making sure that you always have, that you're always in roles that you're really proud of and really keeping up with the way the world is changing. You'll always be well positioned.
I love all of those. And I would add also become an AMA Boston member and meet cool CMOs in our community, right? Awesome. Well, we have one question in the chat, and guys, if you want to unmute and ask questions, feel free, just raise your hand and I can call on you so we don't have chaos. But the first question is, how much of your job as a CMO is focused on helping fundraising for GBH, helping with fundraising for GBH?
Good question. Surprisingly, very little. I think we have been an organization that has different functions have been somewhat disconnected from each other. And there are people within our fundraising who perform some marketing. I think what we have been really striving on in the last 18 months is how we take a step back and say, okay, who are we trying to reach? And what are we trying to do with that audience? So fundraising might be a piece of it. Getting them to understand all of our different programming might be a piece of it. And so we're trying to blend a lot of those things much more. We do have an interesting thing called CDP that we developed as a sort of an internal business unit that we've spun out that helps other PBS stations fundraise. So that's kind of like another independent business unit that is not in any way connected to me. But we care a lot at GBH about making sure the PBS system is healthy. Because we need all of those other geographies to be there to carry our programming, not even if it's, broadcast specifically, but through websites and community engagement. That's all really important. So I think that was a long-winded way of saying, not so much.
Very cool. Anyone want to unmute and jump in, or go ahead, Bob.
Hi, Tina. I'm Bob Cargill, past president of AMA Boston. And my question for you is the digital mural that I see often, go by quite often, have for many years on the Mass Pike. Who decides how long is the queue for what goes up there on a daily basis? And do you have any contributions to that? And does it ever have to do with marketing? Just curious.
Absolutely, yes. My team programs that mural. We program about a week out. We can make a last minute change, like if somebody really famous dies or, there's a breaking news story. It's interesting because it's a somewhat clunky piece of equipment that was sort of custom built just for that space about 15 years ago. The building's been there about a dozen years, but even the planning for that. So we're actually going to be changing it up in the fall and installing a new system that should make it much easier. But there's actually a lot of programming that goes into getting those images up there, and we can program it in advance. During COVID, it was really challenging because you have to do it on site, and the person who actually punches in the codes could not get there. So it's really, so much more goes into it than you just, see it. You think it would be easy. We're hoping to make it easier. But what we do is we plan out a week in advance, what we think a lot about commuters and what the commuter mindset is. So whether it's tuning into All Things Considered or listening to Jim and Marjorie. So there's a lot of radio, but if we have any major broadcast TV programming coming up, we'll do that. And then we have other things as well that are just, ways of recognizing our community. So during Teacher Appreciation Week, you may have seen there was a picture of Rick Astley, and you may have heard of the Rick Roll. There were a bunch of elementary school kids who had written in asking if they could do this as part of an April Fool's joke. So we went along with the gag. Again, this is sort of about putting the audience first, right? It was so nice to have kids reaching out to us, asking us if we would, have an April Fool's joke with them, and we did. So it can really be anything. It's not just always promoting our own stuff. It can be something that delights commuters as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Great question, Bob. All right, well, I think we have time for one more question if someone wants to jump in, and then we'll be doing breakouts. And I believe Tina might be sticking around for a little longer, so maybe you'll get to chat with her then. Go ahead, Robert.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, Tina. I enjoyed hearing the podcast with you and Chris, and I found it fascinating of your discussion about transitioning GBH from a broadcast landscape to the digital landscape. It's a bit of a big picture question, and I'm curious to hear as to what you found surprising in terms of making the changes, focusing from broadcasting to digital. Do you feel that because of the work you've done in agency help you prepare for any potential, I wouldn't say pushback, but just challenges or concerns they have in moving into a different landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we worked with Mingle to come up with a brand theory. They suggested dropping the W, and I thought, wow, how's that going to go over, right? I thought it was brilliant, and it made perfect sense based on all of the research and also what we knew we wanted to be communicating. But people are really attached to their W. People grew up with it, but people also still call us Channel 2, and yet we're so much more than that, and that was the nut we needed to crack. So what we did was we spent a lot of time communicating in small groups and taking, just picking off groups bit by bit and walking them through the rationale. And when you get to the end, you can't really argue with the logic, right? It makes sense. And when you actually show it, how it works on digital as opposed to our, 1970s style brand, again, you can't really argue with it. So I think a big takeaway for me that I would love to share is just give yourself enough runway to do that internal PR job of getting everybody on board. That included board members and, people who were we surveyed members, we surveyed staff, we really collected a lot of input, and that way everybody felt like they had a voice and they weren't shocked by the outcome. And when people actually saw it roll out, they were really excited.
Okay. Thanks for taking my question.
Yeah, good one. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. And thanks, Tina. This has been really fun. I'm sure we all wish we could go on and on, but want to give you guys an opportunity to do a breakout. Thank you again for doing our Q&A and bringing another iconic local brand to the AMA Boston stage. It was a lot of fun.